Today is the 8th of August. It's a nice, warm, hot day, and it is what we call the middle of summer. You must be wondering why I'm pruning the pines right in the middle of summer. This, in fact, is the ideal time to prune these garden pines. The garden pines, you may have heard them referred to as Niwaki. That is the term the Japanese use for calling these large landscape trees Niwaki. But Niwaki is simply two words in Japanese meaning garden tree. Niwa is garden and ki is tree. So when someone tells you that, oh, I'm growing Niwaki, all he's saying is that he's pruning garden trees. So here we are. The history of these trees goes back a long time. I planted these 4 Scots Pines back in 1991 when I made this pond, but the trees are older than that. They were already quite established pines, about half the height, and the trunks were half as thick. And they were just planted as ordinary Scots Pines for bonsai, but I let them grow, and over the years I pruned them. I started pruning a few, as you can see, but the rest of them still a lot of work to do. In Japan, when they use these pines as garden trees, the favorite species they use is the Japanese black pine, Pinus thunbergii. Sometimes they use the Japanese white pine, the Pinus parviflora. That's also used. In fact, we've got some very big 4-meter high trees which are very, very expensive. I imported them about 15-20 years ago, but it's very hard to get them now. And I now prefer to use the ordinary Scots pine. The ordinary Scots pine for Western Europe is ideal because they're very hardy trees, and you can see the beautiful shapes that we've created. These are made here, are not imported, and they were made from scratch. So it just shows how easy it is to make. But what I'm going to show you today is how to maintain them and how to keep them in shape. This tree is about 4 meters tall. And look at these shoots. These were the candles which sprouted in April, and these ones are about 40 to 50 centimeters long. That's how long they are. So this is the ideal time to prune. If I prune the candles off in April, it would still grow, so I would have to do it twice. So if you do it in April, you'll have to do it again in September. But if you do it in July, August, you can prune all these long 30 to 40 or 50 centimeter long shoots, and that's it for the year. But you've got to prune it each year, otherwise the shape will be completely lost. The tools we use for pruning these trees is quite simple, really. In Japan, I've seen them use basically this pair of scissors, the big handled scissors like this. In fact, this is my favorite bonsai pruning scissors as well. So we use this one, and then these are the loppers for slightly thicker branches. The trusted Felco secateurs, very sharp. This I will use for more or less 90% of the time. So this is going to be my main tool, ever so sharp. I've cut my finger off almost once. This very sharp saw, which is called a Zubat saw, will be used should we need to take any branches off. So this is a very dangerous saw. And you notice that I always carry a glove with me. I only use one glove. I'm right-handed, and because I'm right-handed, I'm always gripping the shoots, and if you're not careful you can snip your finger off. So I keep a right-handed glove just in case I slip and it can cut my finger. So a left-handed glove is very useful for right-handed people. So these are the only tools I need. So with these tools, and of course the tall Japanese ladder which I have here, which I will use to get to the top of the trees. As with shaping bonsai, we always begin from the bottom and work upwards. I don't know why. I somehow feel more comfortable working this way. There is no logical reason why you can't start from the top, but I prefer to work from the bottom. No, I think working from the bottom has sense, because if you establish the base of the triangle, you can then shape the apex accordingly. If you start with the top, you don't know where you'll end up at the bottom. So starting from the bottom on reflection does make sense. So each of these branches has what we call the classic pads. And there are lots of old needles that can be cut off. And what I'm cutting here are basically this year's shoots. And most of these shoots are this year's shoots. Look at this one. All these shoots, 1, 2, 3, are the 3 candles which emerged in the spring. So this one is about, I would say in old money, the 4 inches long. But I'm not going to prune all of it off. I'm only going to prune 2/3 of it off. I prune there, and the shorter ones I prune that. So I will do that to all of them. I just do it instinctively. So can you imagine how long it is, the process of pruning every shoot off? In Japan they say only rich people can afford to have these garden pines because they need to be pruned every year. Sometimes you can even do it twice a year, but I think once a year is enough. And if it's done by hand, I once saw a television program where they said it takes about 65 men to prune one of those big trees in the Kyoto gardens. And that takes about 3 days. In fact, I prefer to use the Japanese scissors because this I can work faster. So all these long shoots like this, it's important to prune the ends because if you don't prune the ends, they become longer and longer branches. So all that I prune like that. Anything hanging down from the other branches I take off. This is a classic bonsai pad as we describe it. If it's shooting too high up, I can take the whole thing off. Supposing if that is too high, I can take all that off. And these are lying down. This is a simple one. Now let's look at this pad here. See, straight away, all the downward pointing ones, because Scots Pine have this drooping habit, all the downward hanging branches we get rid of. Now this is clouding that bit, so rather than just prune the candle, I prune that whole branch off because I want to show the trunk. I want to go into the trunk and show that. Again, I work very fast. I work probably 3 times as fast as anyone else, or maybe faster. So don't compare my time with what you will be doing as an amateur or novice. But don't despair, you can enjoy just as much working slowly. It's just that I have so many trees to do that I naturally work fast. And there are a lot of old needles that you can just shake off. You don't have to just methodically take each candle or shoot off. Just prune the ends and it will bud back. All this budding back has been achieved over the last 27 or 28 years simply by doing this. And the trunk has hardened in the process and thickened. So that is that pad. That's a simple one. This is a simple one. Now this is a tricky one because can you see this one, this pad is merging with that one. So let's see what we can do about that. This is quite a problem. So let's take all the hanging ones off. Let's create the top pad first. Take the top shoots. Anything which is growing too long, if there's such a lot of shoots that you don't have to worry. Sometimes you can go in and take large, small branches. If you look closely at this one, it is absolutely congested. Completely congested. So you got to decide, because you've got more than enough, I can take entire sections like that off. There is so much there that whatever you take off, what remains is sufficient to create the pad. And a lot of dead needles there that you can clear out. There are several pads, in fact. Now, I notice if you come closer here, you will see that this pad is overhanging this pad. But there is so much that I can even take this much out. I've taken that much out. I don't think it'll affect it. This is from the other branch. I need to separate the different pads. And this, of course, is good, almost 30 centimeter long. We get those off. Lot of dead needles from last year, can you see? They need to be shaken off. Although I did shake the needles off in the autumn, they do produce more dead needles during the spring when the new shoots come. I would say I'm going to remove half the foliage from this tree after I've done its summer pruning. So all these shoots there, those long bits, cut back. So this is this pad done. Okay, now I have to think about this pad. This is really congested and it's merging into that. So there is some serious work to be done here. If I were to show you me pruning all these, this job is going to take me, in spite of me working very fast, I reckon it'll take me 2 days to do. And I can't do you a 48-hour YouTube video. It would be much too long. I'll try and condense this to about half an hour at most. But I will show you the finished product and the interesting bits that I do in the middle. I will also show you, but you have to bear with me. Again, it's the general principle. See all these long shoots, I cut back there. Anything hanging down, I cut off. That's hanging, I'll cut off. Where the shoots are a bit long and stiff, I use the Felco secateurs. Otherwise, I normally use just the Japanese shears. Now, there's a bit of branch sticking out here. I think I can take that off. Anything going upwards, I take off. Anything growing down, I take off as well. Scots Pines, unfortunately, have a very annoying habit of being droopy. The branches don't stand up easily. Unlike the black pine or the Japanese white pine, the new branches or the new shoots are very droopy. You notice I'm changing between the secateurs and the Japanese scissors. For the ordinary pruning, I prefer to use the Japanese scissors. For anything thick, over about 10 or 15 millimeter, I then use the secateurs, the sharp secateurs. If you come close, you see there's such a lot of debris in there. All the old needles are in here. It's worth having a close look at it. It's completely congested, so congested. It's like a thatch, unlike a bonsai. But there is a branch structure in there. If I just remove some of the old debris and the needles, I will take it back to the branch structure, and then you will appreciate the shape of the pads. So, all this has grown in the last year. And if you don't prune it each year, you will lose control completely of the tree. It's okay to show the branch structure. See, I'm pruning those top ones off. And a lot of hanging branches too. Take that off. There is some method in what I can call my madness. You might think that I'm just pruning at random, but there is a method in what I'm doing. I'm pruning the shoots at least half, if not more. So I'm thinning it. You see how thick this is? I will show you how this is thin. And now this one also. I'll thin that out. So you see this branch structure here. You can now see the actual branches. It's not just foliage. So I'm going to go all the way back into there. That can come off. Big chunks like that can be taken off. Anything hanging down like this, I don't need, I get rid of it. So now you can see, if you can come close, you can see what was congested like this. You can now see the branch structure here, and that is the structure on which these new shoots are going to hang. And Scots Pines do break back from old wood, so it will be filled like this by next year, so don't worry. I haven't scalped it completely. Now this is another very congested one. Look at it, so congested. So where do you begin? So I will just trust luck. Anything hanging down, I take off. Anything shooting upwards, I take off. And I will try and get back to, as I said, the branch structure to show the pads. See, the branches from the adjacent pad have meshed into this one. So I've got to deal with that. Now this bit is from this pad, so this is meshing with this. So I will take the whole thing off. As much as that, taken off. So it's not just pruning the tips, as I said, you have to do some structural pruning as well. So that massive ugly pad has been reduced to something as simple as this. Can you see how thin it has become? Normally, if you don't prune it, it is just a jungle and a great mass of foliage there. Now this one is typical of the unpruned branch, and I will show you how we go through this process. It is quite an intricate process. Now this great big mass is the pad that has grown since last year, since last August. And this is what it should look like when it's pruned. So to get from this to this is what I start doing. I will look for the structure. If we come closer in here, you will see that there are some established branches. It's this that I want to create. There's much too much in here, so we will proceed to take off as much as that. So I've created that space. You notice that I always have to keep my left hand glove on in case the secateurs slip and I cut my finger. So if you remember what it looked like, it was a dense mass. I've now created this space so you can see all the structure. You can see all the branches. So that's what I'm going to do for each of these pads. I'm now going to show you how I deal with the apex. The apex, as you can see, is just a round big beehive, and I need to create space in there. So I will go in there. I will just go in there and be a bit bold and cut in there and see what I can create. These that are hanging down, I don't want this to mesh with this, so I will take this bit off, as much as that come off. These which are sprouting up, I will take off. At least there's so much choice. You can't go wrong because there are lots of branches to choose from. And in any case, if you cut wrong, it'll grow again next year. So don't be worried about that. You can't spoil it that much. The very long shoots which are spoiling the shape obviously come off. Don't forget the pines bud back very easily. All this dense growth has been created or grown since last August. So I would say about 80 or 90% of this foliage is last year's foliage. And after pruning, you'll get as much again next year. This, by the way, is a Japanese ladder. The Chinese make it still, or have started making it, but the Japanese created this about 20 years ago, and this is a genuine Japanese ladder that I imported from Japan. It's a beautiful tripod ladder, very safe and very light. So this top, which was just a round blob, I've now opened spaces in there, so there's space going through there. And you can see more of the twigs. But in a year's time, it'll be completely filled again. So the typical bonsai principles, once again, is to show the trunk line. It's got a beautiful curvy trunk line. And this trunk line has never been wide. The trunk line has been created simply by pruning. Simply by pruning the branches in the right place, and we've got this beautiful S shape simply by cutting the branches which are not wanted and then growing it out. So this is how we've created that shape. This, if you look at it, could be considered a fault, but I wouldn't take it off, because if I take it off it will become too bare. So I've left that one there. I might possibly take this off, may not affect it. See, it doesn't affect it one bit, and that's all I'll do. Now I've got to do it from the back, and this is how we basically shape this tree. Little more at the back and the tree will be done. So this has taken me a total of about 2 hours to do this and the lower branches of that, and I reckon I will probably take 2 complete days to do all the 4 trees. Now this tree has been pruned. You can see how light it is. I think if you went back and compared it to the unpruned tree, you will see a big difference. So you can now see the trunk line and the trunk structure. Talking about seeing the trunk line, I was just standing back and I said to myself, this branch here, although it's very nice, the view is mainly from that side. I think this branch is in the way. So I'm tempted, I'm not just saying tempted, I will remove it. So that's why I have a saw handy. So with this Zubat saw, I'm going to cut this branch off. It's taken years to grow, but I think it's clouding the beautiful trunk line. So I'm going to take it off. And by taking it off, look at that great big pad, beautiful pad. You can now see the beautiful trunk line of this tree. So looking at the trunk line, I think is very important, because we are using the same bonsai principle. This also is clouding a bit, but I'm not too worried about that. So I've cleared the trunk line so you can see the trunk. And when you look at this tree, if you analyze this tree, you could argue that this branch is in fact hiding the beautiful trunk line. But because it's such a major thing, I may not remove it completely, but I'll remove half of it, so it'll look much lighter in appearance. So rather than remove the whole thing, I will just gradually take some of it off and see what happens. I think that's a compromise. I've removed some of it so you can see the beautiful trunk line every time. You can see it. The top I haven't done yet. I've got to use the tall ladder to get to that. Now when we come to another tree, this tree again, you look at all the beautiful trunk line we have, and if you look at this branch here, this branch, in my view, is really doing nothing. So if I gradually remove bits of it and see what happens, that's a compromise. I'm not removing it completely. I could remove it completely, but I'll just remove part of it, because those branches, curvy branches, are quite interesting. So that shows the trunk line. Also, if I look again, this branch is hiding it, so off it comes. There you are. Now you can see the entire trunk line. As I go higher up, I will consider some more, removal. So the beauty of these trees is in the form of the line and the overall outline shape. So I've now finished one tree completely, half of that, almost half of that. So I have another whole day's work to do. So the next shots will be when these trees are almost completely done. There you go.